Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you are with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Always glad to make it to the end of the week, and we are glad that you are with us. Jim Garrity still away at the National Review Ideas Summit, and here in his place is Jon Gabriel, columnist for the Arizona Republic and Discourse magazine. He is also the author of the smash hit debut novel, Sink the Rising Sun, which tells the story of submarine warfare in the Pacific Theater in World War II. I highly recommend it. John, always great to have you.
Oh, great to be here. Can't say I'm missing the Idea Summit. My idea of a summit or conference is usually just sitting alone in a darkened room with a glass of bourbon here in my beautiful home. I'm not the most social fellow, so. But I hope Jim has a wonderful time.
I hope so, too. Let's get to, we got a couple of good martinis today. Honestly, three, depending on how you look at it. So let's get to the first one. Yesterday, as anticipated, as promised, President Trump signing an executive order to abolish, or really wind down, the Department of Education.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right, and we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time.
And you'll hear a lot of people on the left, elected and otherwise, screeching that he can't do this. It has to be done by Congress because the department was created by Congress. He literally just said this is going to come before you, Democrats. So hopefully you do the right thing. I'm sure they won't. But nonetheless, he can certainly hollow out the Department of Education over the next 4 years. And while some people are hyperventilating, and we'll hear one of those examples in a moment, there are good reasons to do this. The department was created in 1979. And let's just say the results since 1979, not that good.
After 45 years, the United States spends more money on education by far than any other country, and spends likewise by far more money per pupil than any country, and it's not even close. But yet we rank near the bottom of the list in terms of success. It's an amazing stat. Those are two stats you don't want. The most money spent per pupil, and you're at the bottom of the list. And that's where we are, like it or not. And we've been there for a long time. 70% of eighth graders are not proficient in either reading or in math. 70%. 40% of fourth graders lack even basic reading skills, can't read. Students in our public elementary and middle schools score worse in reading today than when the department opened, by a lot. In Baltimore, 40% of the high schools have 0 students who can do basic mathematics. Not even the very simplest of mathematics. I said, give me your definition of basic. And they're talking about like adding a few numbers together. Despite these breathtaking failures, the department's discretionary budget has exploded by 600% in a very short period of time, and it employs bureaucrats in buildings all over Washington, D.C.
And then right on cue, John, the Democrats absolutely having a conniption fit here. Here's Elizabeth Warren, who you knew would come through for us in that regard.
For every public school teacher, every public school librarian, every administrator, every school bus driver, everybody who helps educate our kids, you need to know this is the moment we got to stick together and we got to fight back. I don't care if you are a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, a libertarian, a vegetarian. We need you in this fight. This is the fight for an America where it's not just rich kids who get an education and have a chance to build something with their lives, but that every kid in America gets the best education they can so they can build the best lives. But the only way that's going to happen is if we stay in this fight. It is a fight we can win.
Elizabeth Warren would like to speak to the manager. John, it's I mean, I believe you're old enough. I certainly know a lot of people who went to school before 1979. I'm confident public education existed, and it's still going to exist. The states and localities will be making a large number of the decisions. Some of the elements of the Department of Education are just going to other departments, like special education, for example, will come out of HHS. It's just amazing how the left assumes that if you don't give the federal government power over everything, that you're somehow opposed to it existing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm definitely of that age, the pre-Department of Education generation. And yeah, it was fine. It's best handled locally. It worked forever. Jimmy Carter started this, another brilliant idea from James Earl Carter, rest in peace. And we don't need it. They haven't helped anything. And we just keep spending money to basically be a liaison between Democratic administrations and the teachers union. That's pretty much what it's devolved into. The Department of Education does not educate. So why do we have it in the first place? I say when people ask about what do you think about defunding or just eliminating the Department of Education, my thought is, well, it's a good start. There's all sorts of departments that don't really need to be there because they aren't helping anything. They aren't helping what they're supposed to be helping. And as Trump said in the clips, and as anyone can see, if you look at the NAEP scores, NAEP, national testing scores, they are not impressive. They are not impressive at all. And if a Department of Education in Washington, D.C., rents a bunch of space there for people to sit there and watch scores decline in math, reading, science, and everything else, I'm sorry, we can do a whole lot better. The DOE has not done its job, so see you later, folks.
The DOE needs to be DOA pretty soon here if they get their way. And so, but I saw a poll the other day, John, where obviously most Democrats are opposed to this move. An overwhelming majority of independents are opposed to this, and even a third of Republicans. So do you think it's just that they don't realize the way education used to be handled, that they just think this is going to be a massive upheaval, might affect their kids? So there needs to be some good messaging here to explain to people why this is a good idea, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, to kind of open this up, we have a situation where people say, they're going to shut down education. No, it's a department that's getting shut down. And people are like, oh, I'm for education, so you shouldn't shut down education. No, it doesn't help. There's no need for it. Frankly, if it wasn't around in the first, say, 100 years of American history, we don't need any of those departments. The Department of Energy, the other DOE, that could be eliminated. And the few useful things it does, send it to Department of Defense and others. We just need to shrink government as much as possible. We're 36.6 trillion in debt right now, if memory serves. We need to make cuts, and this is very, very low-hanging fruit. And as far as Republicans, especially Republicans in power, to oppose this, boy, no time to get wobbly, folks. We need to cut a lot of useless dead weight in our federal government, and it's not because it'll only help education if we do this.
Yeah, and check out John's latest column in Discourse Magazine about the need to keep cutting as DOJ keeps going about its work. And it's not like there's not going to be money flowing from Washington. There still will be in a number of ways. I'm sure school meals and so forth will to some extent be that. But it's the edicts. It's the policies, it's the mandates, it's the bathroom policies, it's the everything that they want to culturally engineer coming from Washington. You'll still get that, I'm sure, in a lot of blue states, unfortunately. But for the saner folks in the red states and even local governments potentially in some of the bluer states, I think this could be a huge, huge plus. Again, to officially dismantle, you do need a vote of Congress, and it's not going to happen. So we'll see what happens either after the midterms, after the next presidential election, but you can do a lot to shift things around here in the next few years. So, and I know that most people on the right, the conservative right, are in favor of this. They've been calling for this for a long time. But there are some people now who used to be on the right, John, as you know, who now oppose anything coming out of this administration because they hate Trump, they hate certain policies, and they simply can't, applaud anything that they used to champion. Bill Kristol. Let me bring back a different Republican president who had very much the same message just a year after the Department of Education was created.
I propose, and would have already started, if your hypothesis is correct, a planned and orderly transfer back to the states and local communities of functions the federal government has usurped and which it has proven it is incapable of operating. And one of the first of those would be welfare. One of the second would be in the field of education. I would like to dissolve the $10 billion National Department of Education created by President Carter and turn schools back to the local school districts where we built the greatest public school system the world has ever seen. I think I can make a case that the decline in the quality of public education began when federal aid became federal interference.
Jon, I don't know how you sum up that any better.
Yeah, he rests his case. And I remember this, I was a precocious, what would it have been in 1980, 8th going to 9th grade, something like that. And I remember seeing news reports about should this be created, should a Department of Education be created, and Reagan wants to get rid of this, and won't it be terrible? That kind of caterwauling was going on when, I don't know, it was probably just a few months old. So guys, they are not essential. They haven't helped. If anything, our education standards compared relatively in world standing, it has gotten worse in the United States. It isn't working. Get rid of it.
Yeah. And I've lived around the D.C. area for more years than I care to count now. And the argument from D.C. local officials has always been, well, we just need to spend more money. They spend more money per pupil than any district in the country, and their schools are still some of the worst and have been for a very long time. It's not a dollar to result correlation. It's about focusing on the right things when it comes to education. And federal government just can't get you across the finish line when it comes to that stuff. All right. Well, let's talk about something way better than the Democrats' approach to education, and that is getting you to see the doctor when you need to without a hassle. A lot of times you think you're too busy, or I'll feel better in a couple days, it's fine, or that pain will go away eventually. Guys especially don't really want to go to the doctor, but when it's this easy, do it just to make sure everything's okay. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You don't have to get on the phone and get put on hold and all that jazz. And I told the story earlier this week about how I was referred to a specialist who was an awful specialist, so that I needed to find another one in the same field, and a friend recommended they're a specialist in that field. And I went on ZocDoc, read the reviews, and like this person sounds much more like the person I want to deal with, and it worked out great. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/3ML to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. ZocDoc.com/3ML. All right, Jon, we got some more good news here. This coming from the Trump administration as it relates to an American who had been held in Afghanistan. This story coming from the Free Beacon. The Trump administration has secured the release of Taliban captive George Glesman, an American citizen whom the Biden administration failed to designate as wrongly detained for nearly a year, the State Department announced on Thursday. Quote, today, after 2.5 years of captivity in Afghanistan, Delta Airlines mechanic George Glesman is on his way to be reunited with his wife, Alexandra, said Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And he says no prisoners were exchanged for Glesman's release. There had been some discussion of a prisoner swap, but that did not end up happening. Glesman, 66 years old, was detained by the Taliban in December 2022 while traveling through Afghanistan as a tourist. Jon, I would caution Americans not to go on vacation in Afghanistan with the Taliban in charge. I think that's a fair caution right there. But it just seems weird to me that, A, the Biden administration didn't even get this guy's status right for more than a year. And then secondly, just like with the Americans detained by Hamas, there seems to be an effort to hide this information from the American people. George Glesman is not a household name. And just like most Americans probably couldn't tell you any of the names of the Americans who had been held by Hamas for months and months and months. So what do you make of the release and the fact that the government and journalists don't seem to highlight and put pressure on these horrible regimes to do the right thing?
Yeah, well, I stopped vacationing in Afghanistan a couple of years ago. I sold the timeshare in Kandahar, and I highly recommend avoiding that for your next spring break, kids. Take it from me. But it is true that the press just avoids reporting on these things. While Biden was president, you barely heard about the astronauts stranded in space because Biden basically didn't want Elon Musk getting credit for rescuing them much earlier than he did, that he just ended up doing this week. So it is really crazy. We complain about, the media is biased and these reports are biased, but the bias comes in before it ever gets to the newspaper, if it ever gets to the newspaper, on what they choose to cover. And they just avoid covering this. As you rightly note, Americans held by Hamas, those killed in that horrible attack in a year and a half ago now, pretty much. In Israel, they just don't report things that are inconvenient to their side. So I'm thankful the Trump administration got this gentleman out. Hopefully he will pick better vacation hotspots to put on his TikTok reel. But regardless, no American should be subjected to this. No American should be left behind. It is yet another, hopefully the closing chapter in Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Kabul and from Afghanistan, that he still, and the Pentagon and other people who made those decisions, they still have not been held accountable for that.
There had been a couple of senators, particularly from Georgia. I'm guessing this man was from Georgia. John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, who had campaigned for his release, mentioned a while back that Glesman had been held, quote, in a 9-foot by 9-foot cell with other detainees and has been held in solitary confinement and underground for months at a time. So, I mean, just absolutely unbelievable conditions there. There are other Americans still being held in Afghanistan. And so the fact that we just didn't know about this, or this hadn't been highly publicized, at least. I mean, when the Americans were held in Beirut, Terry Anderson and David Jacobson and Terry Waite, the Anglican envoy, we knew who these people were. William Buckley, not the National Review guy, but the CIA personnel, William Buckley. We knew who these people were. There was constant pressure to get them out. And, and the media perhaps focused on that because they wanted to make Reagan look bad. But at least we knew who they were and we were aware of the story and hopefully putting pressure on the bad guys to get them out, which eventually we did in slightly controversial ways. Yeah,
completely. And the show, this is the middle-aged guy reminiscences episode, by the way, but the show Nightline was created to track the Iranian hostages. One of our embassy personnel in Tehran were captured. Nightline began that with their whole 15 days held in captivity coverage, just wall-to-wall coverage of American hostages because it was such a national outrage. So, gosh, I wish the press would just understand that people on all sides of the debate want to know what's going on. And when politicians make bad decisions, you know what? A lot of times they have a D after their name, and it's okay to report that. We want to root those people out. Heck, even good Democrats want to root out horrible politicians on their side, or at least you would hope.
All right, John. Excellent foreshadowing in the previous Martini about Democrats being fed up with their own kind. We've seen just some of the most awful polling, which usually translates to a good Martini for us. But there are some polls out there showing Democrats have a 27 or 29% approval rating. Only 7% strongly approve of the Democratic Party, and you have to be a little concerned about those 7. But now there's more polling coming out that shows that Democrats are not at all happy, specifically with their leadership in Congress. I think a lot of this has to do with Chuck Schumer and a handful of those Senate Democrats agreeing to overcome the filibuster and eventually get to a final vote to not shut the government down and keep the government funded. But Politico with a story today that there's new polling out from Quinnipiac University. A review of their annual first quarter congressional polling reveals that for the first time in the poll's history, congressional Democrats are now underwater with their own voters in approval ratings. Just 40% of Democrats approve of the job performance of the congressional Democrats, compared to 49% who disapprove. That's a dramatic change from this time last year when 75% of Democrats approved compared to just 21% who disapproved. The Democratic base's disillusionment runs so deep that it's eerily reminiscent of the Republican grassroots sentiment in the period leading up to Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican Party. Interesting verbiage there. The numbers are clear. No longer satisfied with the status quo in their party, Democrats are on the verge of a Tea Party-style intra-party revolt. And so John, I just enjoy the fact that the Democrats keep learning the wrong lessons from this. And so they're apparently going to lurch even further left to stick it to Chuck Schumer. I mean, fiscally conservative Americans have been frustrated with congressional Republicans for rolling over for decades on these budget fights. Democrats have to go through it once, and they act like it's the end of the world. So what do you make of the dissatisfaction on the left here?
Well, they should be dissatisfied because their party is failing, but their party is failing not because they're not ideologically more committed to the left. It's because they've lost touch with the majority of voters. And you saw that in exit polls from Election Day last year, where Trump ended up winning, is they keep picking these 80-20 issues and always are eager to be on the 20% side of each issue, talking about things that people just don't care about. You have a couple Democrats who have begun to figure this out. John Fetterman from Pennsylvania has been the big shock on that front. You also had Kyrsten Sinema, now former senator from Arizona, who kind of went on a pretty hilarious victory parade early this week on how important the filibuster is. And boy, you guys basically kicked me out of office for protecting the filibuster, that now all the Democrats, the further left you are, the more they love the filibuster all of a sudden. So you have a couple Democrats who get it, and obviously they're not going to swing to the right, but boy, just a little bit of common sense and understanding where people actually are would go a really long way to helping the party correct. Not that I'm eager for them to correct, but going even further to the left, even further into these bizarre sub issues that might appeal to, I don't know, 4 academics at Wellesley, that's not going to win votes. And you need to actually take over the House or the Senate, or let alone the White House, if you want to affect policy. You're not going to do it with these weird boutique issues that, only appeal to a tiny, tiny fraction of American voters.
Yeah, they seem very disingenuous on everything. They're injecting bad language to either try to appeal to the younger adults or to...
It's so sad. I did that at age 15, to show my dad who's boss, and then I'd slam the door on him. Yeah, it didn't work for me either, Debs.
All of a sudden they care about the price of eggs when for 3 years they were telling us inflation's not that bad. It's transitory. It's coming down. You really should be very happy with the economy you have, you ungrateful Americans. And so they're kind of in the wilderness right now. I don't know whether it's better short-term, long-term for the Democratic base to be disillusioned and maybe just not bother with politics for a while. That could be good for the right on Election Day. Or if they shift even further to the left and start nominating even crazier candidates, that could potentially be good. Ultimately, what's good for the country is for them to, come back to sanity and embrace at least, some moderate positions like they did a few decades ago. But it doesn't seem like that's the lesson they're learning at all.
Yeah, not at all. It seems to be just kind of hit the accelerator. And aside from politics, just general mental health. Folks, you cannot treat politics like this, just in a constant state of screaming, bitter, firebomb throwing outrage all the time about every issue. As the kids say, touch grass, or I live in Arizona, touch cactus, maybe is what we would say out here. But got to get outside, take a break, play with a puppy, calm down a little bit before you, commit arson or smash in Starbucks windows. Yeah, you'll get over this, but a return to sanity would be in everyone's interest.
Absolutely. Well, John, it's always great to have you. Thanks so much for your time and your insights over the past couple of days. I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Great to be here as always.
Jon Gabriel is a columnist with the Arizona Republic and Discourse magazine, which is through the Mercatus Center. He is also the author of Sink the Rising Sun, a fantastic novel, his debut novel focusing on submarine warfare in the Pacific in World War II with fantastic characters. You are going to love this novel. You're going to be rooting for him the whole way through. So I'm Greg Corumbus of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to our podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us all on X. He's at XJon, EXJON. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corumbus. Have a great weekend. Jim Garrity will be back on Monday. Join us then for the next 3 Martini Lunch.